The great hall of New Seoul Station buzzed with excitement. Thousands of people packed the massive space, their voices creating a low rumble that echoed off the metal walls. Today was special. Today, Princess Hana would speak to her people. Hana walked onto the stage with confident steps. Her black military uniform was perfectly pressed and her medals caught the bright lights above. At 28 years old, she had already done more than most people could dream of. She had led armies across 3 star systems. She had conquered planets that others said could not be taken. Her enemies called her the Iron Flower of the Void, and her friends simply called her unstoppable. The crowd fell silent as she reached the center of the stage. Hana looked out at the sea of faces before her. These were her people, soldiers, workers, scientists, and families who had followed humanity to the stars. They looked at her with respect and admiration. Some even looked at her with fear. My fellow humans, Hana began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. I have spent my life serving our species. I have brought glory to humanity in battles across the galaxy. I have wealth that could buy entire worlds. I have power that reaches from here to the edge of known space. She paused, letting her words sink in. The crowd waited eagerly for what would come next. But I stand before you today as a woman who has everything except the one thing that matters most. I am alone. Her voice grew stronger. I have conquered armies, but I have never found an equal. I have defeated the greatest warriors in human space, but none of them could match me as a partner. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Where was this going? Hana raised her hand for silence. So I issue this challenge to any who think themselves worthy. I seek a husband who can stand beside me as an equal. Not someone who will bow to my power, but someone who can match it. Not someone who will follow my lead, but someone who can share it. The hall erupted in excited chatter. A few bold voices shouted questions, but Hana continued. The trials will be simple. Any man who wishes to court me must pass 3 tests. First, he must prove his strength in combat against me. Second, he must show his wisdom by solving a problem that has puzzled our greatest minds. Third, he must demonstrate the courage to make the hard choices that leaders face every day. She looked directly into the crowd, her eyes fierce and challenging. Is there no one brave enough to marry me? The response was immediate. Hands shot up across the hall. Men shouted their names, declaring their intention to try. But Hana also noticed the nervous looks on many faces. Her reputation was well known. She had never lost a fight. She had never made a wrong decision in battle. She had never shown weakness or mercy to those who opposed her. In the front row, Admiral Tae-min stood up. He was a decorated hero of the Centauri campaign, a man whose tactical skills had saved entire fleets. His chest was covered with medals and his gray hair spoke of years of experience. Princess Hana, I accept your challenge. Scattered applause greeted his announcement. Tae-min was respected throughout human space. If anyone could match the princess, many thought it would be him. Colonel Jin Woo rose next. He was younger than the admiral, but equally famous. His expertise in zero-gravity combat had made him a legend among the Space Marines. I also accept, he said simply. More names followed. Dr. Kyung Ho, the brilliant scientist who had designed the terraforming systems for 6 different worlds. Captain Dong Hyun, who had single-handedly held off a pirate fleet with just 1 ship. Engineer Soo Bin, whose inventions had revolutionized space travel. But as the initial excitement died down, some of the volunteers began to look worried. They whispered among themselves, sharing stories about Hana's incredible abilities, how she had defeated 3 opponents at once in a sword fight, how she had outmaneuvered an entire enemy fleet using only half the ships they had, how she had once stared down a rebel leader until he surrendered without firing a shot. By the end of the week, several names had quietly disappeared from the list. Captain Dong Hyun suddenly remembered urgent business in another system. 2 of the younger officers claimed they were not yet ready for such a serious commitment. Engineer Soo Bin decided his work was too important to interrupt, but the core group remained. Admiral Tae-min was confident in his years of experience. Colonel Jin Woo believed his innovative fighting style could surprise the Princess. Dr. Kyung Ho thought his intellect might succeed where physical strength would fail. Hana watched the preparations with interest. Her advisors had mixed feelings about the whole affair. Minister Boram worried that the princess was setting impossible standards. My lady, perhaps you should consider lowering the difficulty of the trials. These are good men who wish to serve you. I do not want servants, Hana replied firmly. I want a partner, someone who can challenge me, support me, and help me become better than I am alone. If these trials are too easy, they will not find the right person. Ambassador Yunji from the diplomatic corps had different concerns. Princess, what if no one succeeds? What message will that send to our allies? They might think humanity's leaders are too proud to accept help or partnership. Hana considered this. The Terran Colonial Alliance included several alien species now. The Catharans had joined 5 years ago, bringing their advanced biotechnology. The Zephyrians contributed their knowledge of stellar navigation. The Mordians offered their expertise in mineral extraction. All of them watched human leadership carefully, trying to understand how this young species approached cooperation. Let them watch, Hana said finally. Perhaps they will learn something about what real partnership means. The trials were set to begin in 1 month. The great arena of New Sol Station was prepared for combat. The Strategic Planning Center was equipped with the most complex scenarios the military could devise. The ethics panel was assembled with philosophers, military leaders, and civilian representatives. Word spread throughout human space and beyond. Ships arrived daily, bringing observers, reporters, and curious aliens who wanted to witness this unusual event. The entertainment networks bid enormous sums for broadcast rights. Betting pools opened on every station and colony. But in the quiet moments when the crowds had gone home and the cameras were off, Hana stood alone in her quarters, looking out at the stars. She thought about the loneliness that came with power. She thought about the weight of making decisions that affected millions of lives. She thought about whether she was asking for something impossible. Maybe Boram was right. Maybe she was being too demanding. But every time she considered lowering her standards, she remembered the battles she had fought and won alone. She remembered the times when compromise had led to disaster. She remembered that being a leader meant sometimes asking for more than seemed possible. The trials would begin soon. The galaxy was watching, and somewhere out there perhaps was someone brave enough to stand beside the iron flower of the void as an equal. The question remained, was there really no one brave enough to marry her? The arena floor was polished metal that reflected the bright lights overhead. Thousands of spectators filled the seats, their excited voices creating a constant hum of noise. Today the trials would begin. Admiral Taemin stepped into the combat ring wearing his finest power armor. The mechanical suit enhanced his strength and speed, making him faster and stronger than any normal human could be. He had worn this same armor during the famous Battle of Proxima, where he had personally defeated 12 enemy soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. Across from him, Princess Hana checked her own armor systems. Her suit was sleeker and newer, painted in deep blue with silver trim. She moved with easy confidence like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "Begin," called the referee. Taemin charged forward immediately, using his military training to press the attack. His strategy was simple: use his size and experience to overwhelm the princess before she could adapt to his style. His heavy punches came fast and hard, each one capable of denting steel. But Hana was not there when his fists arrived. She moved like water, flowing around his attacks and striking back at unexpected angles. Her counterattacks were precise, finding the weak points in his armor's joints and systems. Within 3 minutes, sparks were flying from Taemin's left arm servo. The admiral tried to change tactics, using his military academy training to create distance and fight more defensively. But Hana had studied in the same academies. She knew every technique he tried before he tried it. Worse, she knew ways to counter those techniques that had never been taught in any school. The fight lasted exactly 7 minutes and 34 seconds. Taemin found himself flat on his back, his armor's power systems disabled, while Hana stood over him with her weapon pointed at his chest. "Yield," he gasped, his pride wounded more than his body. The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted in amazed chatter. Admiral Taemin was supposed to be one of humanity's greatest warriors, but he had looked like a beginner fighting against a master. Colonel Jinwoo's trial took place in the zero-gravity combat chamber. This was his specialty, fighting in the weightless environment of space. He had developed new techniques that used all 3 dimensions, attacking from above and below as well as the sides. The moment the gravity turned off, Jinwoo began moving in complex spirals, using the walls and ceiling to build momentum for his attacks. His style was beautiful to watch, like a deadly dance performed in midair. Hana watched him carefully for the first minute, studying his patterns. Then she began to move. Where Jinwoo's movements were planned and practiced, Hana's were pure instinct. She seemed to know where he would be before he got there. When he came at her from above, she was already moving to intercept. When he tried to use the walls for leverage, she was there to disrupt his momentum. The colonel tried everything he knew. He used feints and misdirection. He attempted to tire her out with constant movement. He even tried some illegal techniques that would have been forbidden in a real military engagement. Nothing worked. Hana moved through three-dimensional space like she had been born in zero gravity. Her attacks came from impossible angles, using vector mathematics that Jinwoo had never seen before. After 15 minutes of increasingly desperate attempts, he finally admitted defeat. "I have never seen anyone fight like that," he told her as they left the chamber. "Where did you learn those techniques?" "I made them up," Hana replied simply. "Your academy teaches you to fight in zero gravity like it is just flying in a straight line. But space has currents and fields and forces that you can use if you understand them." Dr. Kyung-ho approached the strategic trial with more confidence. This was his area of expertise. His intelligence had solved problems that had stumped teams of specialists. He had designed systems that had allowed humanity to colonize hostile worlds. The test scenario was complex. Design a plan to terraform a planet with unusual atmospheric conditions, while supporting a population of 50 million colonists, all within a budget that wouldn't bankrupt the colonial government. Kyung-ho worked for 6 hours, creating detailed charts and calculations. His final plan was elegant and thorough. It used automated systems to process the atmosphere, orbital platforms to adjust solar radiation, and careful resource management to support the growing population. His presentation impressed everyone who watched it. Then Hana took her turn. She worked for only 3 hours, but her plan was revolutionary. Instead of fighting the planet's unusual atmosphere, she proposed working with it. Her design used the atmospheric conditions to power the terraforming systems. Instead of expensive orbital platforms, she suggested using the planet's existing weather patterns to distribute heat and moisture. But the real genius was in how she handled the human element. Where Kyung-ho's plan relied on automation, Hana's plan created jobs. Thousands of colonists would be employed in maintaining and improving the terraforming systems. The work would give them purpose and pride, while also making the project more flexible and adaptable. "Your plan is efficient," she told Kyung-ho when they compared results. "But efficiency alone is not enough. People need to feel that they are building something, not just watching machines do everything for them." The doctor looked at her analysis with growing amazement. Her plan would accomplish the same goals as his, but faster, cheaper, and with better results for the colonists' morale and economy. "I had not considered the psychological factors," he admitted. "I was thinking only about the technical challenges." "That is why you would not be ready to rule," Hana said gently. "A leader must think about the whole picture, not just the parts they understand best." The moral courage trial broke the remaining candidates completely. Hana presented them with an impossible scenario. A cosmic disaster threatened 2 different worlds. One was a human colony with 3 million people. The other was a newly discovered alien planet with an entire species that had never been contacted before. They could only save one. Which would they choose? The candidates struggled with the question. Some chose to save the humans, arguing that their first loyalty was to their own species. Others chose to save the aliens, saying that a unique civilization was more valuable than a single colony. A few tried to find compromise solutions that might save part of both populations, but Hana was not satisfied with any of their answers. She pressed them harder, asking them to defend their choices against increasingly difficult objections. She forced them to think about the long-term consequences of their decisions, not just the immediate results. One by one, they began to crack under the pressure. They realized that there was no perfect answer, no solution that would not result in tremendous loss of life. The weight of such a decision was too much for them to bear. Dr. Kyung-ho was the last to withdraw. He stood before the ethics panel, his face pale and his hands shaking. "I cannot make this choice," he said quietly. "The responsibility is too great. I am not ready for such leadership." As the final candidate left the stage, the Great Hall fell silent. Minister Boram looked worried. Ambassador Unji seemed confused. The alien observers whispered among themselves in their various languages. Princess Hana stood alone on the stage, just as she had been alone when she started. Her challenge remained unanswered. Her question still hung in the air. Was there no one brave enough to marry her? The silence stretched on for long minutes. Some people began to leave, disappointed that the trials had ended so quickly. Others waited, hoping that perhaps someone else would step forward. Then, from the section reserved for diplomatic observers, a voice spoke clearly through the quiet hall. "I would like to attempt the trials." Every head turned toward the speaker. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The voice had not been human. Standing in the alien section was Vel, a Kitharan diplomat who had been observing the proceedings as part of his species' cultural exchange program. He was 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and crystalline skin that shifted color as he moved. His large, multifaceted eyes reflected the arena lights like jewels. No alien had ever attempted to court human royalty. The very idea was unprecedented, shocking, and completely unexpected. Princess Hana looked at the Kitharan with surprise and interest. For the first time in days, she smiled. The great hall erupted in shocked voices. People turned to their neighbors, asking if they had heard correctly. An alien wanted to marry Princess Hana? It was impossible. It was unthinkable. It was absolutely fascinating. Vel walked down the steps toward the main floor, his forearms moving in the graceful pattern that Kitharans used for formal occasions. His crystalline skin had turned a deep blue color, which those familiar with his species knew meant he was completely serious about his intentions. Minister Boram jumped to her feet, her face red with embarrassment and anger. "This is outrageous. The trials were meant for human suitors. There are treaties and protocols and diplomatic considerations. You cannot simply—" "My proclamation made no mention of species requirements," Princess Hana interrupted, her voice cutting through the minister's protests. She studied Vel with curious eyes. "If this Kitharan believes himself worthy of the challenge, then I see no reason to refuse him." The crowd buzzed with excitement and scandal. Some humans muttered angry comments about alien interference in human affairs. Others were simply amazed by the unprecedented situation. A few seemed genuinely interested to see what would happen. Ambassador Yunji, the Kitharan representative to the human government, looked mortified. Her skin had turned pale yellow, the color of extreme embarrassment among her people. This was definitely not part of any planned diplomatic strategy. "Vel!" she called out in their native language, which sounded like musical chimes to human ears. "What are you doing? This could damage relations between our species." Vel's skin shifted to confident gold as he replied in perfect human standard. "I am acting as an individual, not as a representative of our government. And I believe this could improve relations between our species, not damage them." He turned to face Princess Hana directly. "Your Highness, I have observed your trials carefully. I have studied your military campaigns and your leadership decisions. I believe I understand what you are truly seeking." "And what is that?" Hana asked, her interest clearly growing. "You're not looking for someone to follow you or obey you," Vel said. "You are looking for someone who can stand beside you as an equal. Someone who can challenge your thinking and help you grow. Someone brave enough to see possibilities that others cannot imagine." The hall fell quiet as people listened to his words. Even the angry muttering died down as humans tried to understand what this alien was really saying. "You see clearly," Hana admitted, "but understanding what I seek and being able to provide it are very different things. Are you prepared to face the same trials that defeated some of humanity's greatest heroes?" "I am," Vel replied without hesitation. "But I should warn you that I will not approach them the same way the human candidates did. My species thinks differently about conflict, strategy, and moral choices." Princess Hana's smile grew wider. "Good. I would be disappointed if you simply copied their methods. The arrangements took 3 days to complete. The diplomatic staff had to work frantically to make sure that the trials would not violate any treaties between humans and Kitharans. Legal experts had to research whether alien participation was allowed under human law. Medical teams had to study Kitharan physiology to ensure fair competition conditions. During this time, Vel prepared in his own way. Instead of training in the combat rooms like the human candidates had, he spent hours in meditation. Instead of studying military tactics, he read philosophy and poetry. Instead of reviewing strategic case studies, he walked in the station's gardens, observing how different plants grew together in harmony. Other aliens throughout the station watched his preparations with great interest. The Zephyrian trade representatives whispered among themselves about the implications for interspecies relations. The Mordian mining engineers made jokes about Catharan romance customs. Everyone had an opinion about what Vel was trying to accomplish. Some humans were furious about the situation. A group of military officers sent a formal complaint to Princess Hana, arguing that allowing alien participation weakened human prestige. Several colonial governors expressed concern about the message this would send to other species, but others were intrigued. Dr. Yi Jun, the station's chief xenobiologist, found the whole situation fascinating from a scientific perspective. "Think of what we could learn about Catharan culture and psychology," he told anyone who would listen. "This is an unprecedented opportunity for research." Captain Minho, who commanded the station's defense fleet, had a more practical view. "If this alien can somehow match the princess in combat, strategy, and leadership, then maybe we should be learning from him instead of dismissing him." Princess Hana herself seemed completely calm about the controversy. She continued her normal duties, reviewing colonial reports and meeting with military advisors. But those who knew her well noticed that she seemed more interested and alert than she had been in months. "You seem pleased with this development," Minister Boram observed during one of their private meetings. "I am curious," Hana replied. The human candidates all approached the trials with predictable methods. They used standard military training, conventional strategic thinking, and traditional ethical frameworks. This Kitharan clearly intends to try something different. "But what if he succeeds?" Boram asked nervously. "What if you actually marry this alien? The political complications would be enormous." Hana was quiet for a long moment, looking out her office window at the stars beyond. "Perhaps it is time for humanity to face some political complications. We have been expanding across the galaxy for 50 years, always assuming that our way of doing things is best. Maybe we need to learn that there are other ways to be strong, other ways to lead, other ways to build a civilization." The night before the trials were to begin, Vel requested a private meeting with Princess Hana. They met in the diplomatic quarters, a neutral space decorated with art and symbols from all the allied species. "I want you to understand something before we begin," Vel said, his skin cycling through thoughtful blue patterns. "Among my people, courtship is not about proving dominance or superiority. It is about demonstrating compatibility and complementary strengths." "Explain," Hana said, settling into a chair designed for human physiology. "Your human suitors tried to beat you at your own games." Vel continued. "They attempted to show that they were stronger fighters, better strategists, more decisive leaders. But that approach will never work because you are already the best at these things. Then how do you plan to succeed where they failed?" Vel's skin shifted to warm gold, the color of confidence mixed with affection. "I plan to show you that together we could be something greater than either of us could be alone. Not by defeating you, but by complementing you. Not by matching your strengths, but by bringing different strengths that work alongside yours." Hana studied his alien features, trying to read his intentions. "That is a very different approach. But the trials still require you to face the same challenges. Combat strategy, moral courage. How will you handle those without trying to defeat me?" "You will see tomorrow," Vel replied mysteriously. "But I can promise you this. I will not disappoint you." As he left the meeting, Hana found herself more excited about the upcoming trials than she had been since issuing her original challenge. For the first time, she was facing an opponent who intended to surprise her. The next morning, the arena was packed beyond capacity. People had traveled from across human space to witness this unprecedented event. Alien observers filled their designated sections, equally curious to see how one of their kind would perform in human trials. As Vel entered the combat ring, his skin was bright silver, the Kitharan color of determination. The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what would happen when alien philosophy met human tradition in direct competition. Princess Hana entered from the opposite side, her expression focused and alert. She had no idea what to expect from this unusual challenger, and for the first time in years she felt the thrill of facing a truly unknown opponent. The trials were about to begin, and the galaxy was watching. The combat arena fell completely silent as Princess Hana and Vel faced each other across the polished metal floor. The alien stood 8 feet tall, his forearms relaxed at his sides, his crystalline skin gleaming silver under the bright lights. Hana checked her power armor systems one final time, her movements quick and precise. "Begin," called the referee. But instead of charging forward like the human candidates had done, Vel simply stood still and waited. His skin shifted to a calm blue color, and his forearms moved into a defensive pattern that resembled flowing water. Hana circled him carefully, studying this new approach. She had expected him to attack immediately, using his size and extra limbs to overwhelm her. Instead, he seemed to be inviting her to make the first move. She feinted left, then struck right with lightning speed. Her armored fist should have connected solidly with his torso, but somehow Vel was not there when it arrived. He had moved just enough to let her attack slip past, and his own counterattack came from an unexpected angle. The fight that followed was unlike anything the crowd had ever seen. Hana attacked with her usual aggressive style, pressing forward with combinations of strikes and grapples that had defeated every previous opponent. But Vel never tried to stop her attacks directly. Instead, he redirected them, using her own momentum against her. His forearms moved independently, creating complex defensive patterns while his crystalline skin hardened at the exact points where Hana's strikes landed. When she aimed for his head, his skin became diamond-hard just in time to deflect the blow. When she tried to grab his arms, they became slippery and impossible to hold. "Impossible," breathed Colonel Jinwoo from the observer section. "He is using some kind of adaptive defense system." But Dr. Yi Jun, the xenobiologist, shook his head. "No technology. That is pure Kitharan biology. Their skin can change properties instantly based on neural commands, and those defensive movements, that is their traditional martial art. They call it flow fighting." For 10 minutes, Hana pressed her attack while Vel flowed around her strikes like water around a stone. Neither fighter was gaining a clear advantage, but both were learning about their opponent's capabilities. Then something changed. Vel's skin shifted from defensive blue to aggressive red, and suddenly he was no longer just defending. His forearms began attacking in patterns that seemed impossible to human eyes. Each limb moved independently, striking from different angles simultaneously. Hana found herself defending for the first time in years. Vel's attacks came from above and below, left and right, all at the same time. Her power armor's system struggled to track 4 separate threats moving in completely different directions. But Princess Hana had not earned her reputation by giving up when things became difficult. She adapted her fighting style, using her armor's enhanced reflexes to counter multiple attacks at once. She began to find openings in Vel's complex assault patterns. The battle intensified. Both fighters were pushing their abilities to the limit. Vel's skin cycled through different colors as he adjusted his defensive properties. Hana's armor sparked and whined as its systems were strained beyond normal limits. Finally, after exactly 20 minutes of combat, both fighters struck simultaneously. Hana's armored fist connected with Vel's torso, just as his four-armed combination overwhelmed her defenses. Both warriors staggered back, their energy completely exhausted. "Draw!" gasped the referee as medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. Hana pulled off her helmet, breathing heavily. Sweat ran down her face, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "I have never fought anyone like you," she told Vel as the medics checked them both for injuries. "Nor I like you," Vel replied, his skin cycling through grateful silver patterns. "Your adaptation speed is remarkable. By the end, you were anticipating my four-armed combinations." "Acceptable," Hana declared, using the same word she had used for the drawn combat. But this time she said it with genuine respect rather than disappointment. The strategic trial took place in the planning center, a room filled with holographic displays and tactical computers. The challenge was the same one Dr. Kyung-ho had faced. Design a terraforming plan for a hostile planet while supporting 50 million colonists on a limited budget. Vel studied the problem for several hours, his large eyes processing information in ways that human observers found mesmerizing. His skin shifted through various shades of thoughtful blue and green as he worked. When he finally presented his solution, it stunned everyone in the room. Instead of fighting the hostile planet's environment, Vel proposed working with it. His plan used living biotechnology instead of mechanical systems. Specially engineered plants would gradually change the atmosphere, while providing food and building materials for the colonists. Symbiotic organisms would clean the water and soil while creating entire ecosystems. "This is not terraforming," Dr. Kyung-ho objected. "This is something completely different." "Exactly," Vel replied, his skin glowing with confident gold. Terraforming assumes that you must make a planet like Earth before humans can live on it. But what if humans learn to live as part of the planet's existing systems instead of replacing them? His biological approach would take longer than traditional terraforming, but the results would be far more stable and sustainable. The colonists would not be fighting their environment. They would be part of it. The planet would not be conquered, it would be joined. But the most revolutionary aspect was how Vel handled the human element. His plan included extensive cultural exchange programs with alien species who had different expertise. Kitherans would contribute biotechnology. Zephyrians would provide atmospheric knowledge. Mordians would offer geological insights. You are suggesting that human colonies should be multi-species from the beginning, Princess Hana observed. Why not? Vel asked. Each species has different strengths. Together, they could create something that no single species could achieve alone. The implications were staggering. Instead of human expansion followed by alien integration, Vel was proposing true partnership from the very beginning. Instead of conquest and adaptation, he offered cooperation and mutual growth. When the strategic trial ended, even Hana's advisors were forced to admit that Vel's approach was brilliant. It solved the original problem while opening up entirely new possibilities for interspecies cooperation. But the moral courage trial was where Vel truly surprised everyone. Faced with the impossible choice between saving a human colony or an alien civilization, Vel stood before the ethics panel and calmly announced that he rejected the premise of the question. You are asking me to choose between two forms of life, he said, his skin cycling through serious purple patterns. But this assumes that such a choice is necessary. What if there was a third option? He presented a plan that would use Kitheran biotechnology to temporarily merge the consciousness of both species, allowing them to share knowledge and work together to find a solution that could save both worlds. The cosmic disaster you described is a plasma storm, Vel explained. Humans know how to build energy shields. The alien species has natural telepathic abilities that could coordinate a planet-wide defense. Together, they could create a protection system that neither could build alone. The ethics panel was speechless. They had designed the scenario to force an impossible choice, to test how a leader would handle situations where no good options existed. But Vel had refused to accept that no good options existed. Sometimes, he continued, courage is not about making hard choices. Sometimes courage is about refusing to accept that the choices you have been given are the only ones possible. Minister Boram found her voice first. But what if your plan failed? What if the consciousness merger did not work? What if the two species could not cooperate effectively? Vel's skin shifted to gentle silver. Then we would have died trying to save everyone instead of living with the guilt of choosing to let someone die. Is that not a better way to fail? Princess Hana stared at him for a long moment. Around the room, the observers were completely silent. Even the alien representative seemed amazed by Vel's approach. You understand, she said quietly. I hope so, Vel replied. The trials were never about defeating me. They were about finding someone who could see beyond the limitations that others accept, someone who could imagine possibilities that others miss, someone brave enough to reject false choices and create new options. She stood up, her decision clear in every line of her body. Vel of the Kitherans, I accept your proposal of marriage. The great hall erupted in cheers, gasps, and excited chatter. Some humans looked shocked. Some aliens looked amazed. But most people seemed thrilled by this unprecedented development. As Vel's skin shifted to the warm gold of joy and gratitude, Princess Hana stepped forward and took one of his 4 hands in both of hers. Together, she said, we will build something that neither of our species could create alone. The trials were over. The challenge had been met, and the galaxy would never be the same. The wedding of Princess Hana and Vel became the most celebrated event in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species traveled to New Sol Station for the ceremony. Ships filled the space around the station until it looked like a glittering city floating among the stars. The ceremony itself blended human and Kitheran traditions in ways that no one had ever seen before. Hana wore a dress of deep blue silk embroidered with silver patterns that resembled both earth flowers and Kitheran crystal formations. Vel's skin had been carefully prepared by his people's artists, displaying intricate color patterns that told the story of their courtship in the visual language of his species. Human Admiral Won Sik performed the military honors, while Kithrin elder Sylvia conducted the spiritual aspects of the ceremony. The vows were spoken in both languages, with translation provided for the hundreds of different species in attendance. But the real celebration was not the ceremony itself. It was what happened afterward, as humans and aliens mingled freely for perhaps the first time in galactic history. The reception lasted for 3 days, with each species contributing their own music, food, and entertainment. Zephyrian merchants displayed goods that most humans had never seen. Mordian engineers demonstrated mining techniques that amazed human construction workers. Kitharan philosophers discussed ethics with human military officers, finding common ground despite their different approaches to moral questions. Minister Boram watched the celebration with mixed feelings. "I still worry about the political implications," she confided to Ambassador Yunji during the second day of festivities. "This marriage changes everything about how our species interact." The Kitharan diplomat's skin showed thoughtful patterns as she replied, "Change can be frightening, but it can also be necessary. Our species have been allies for 5 years, but we have remained separate. Perhaps it is time to become something more." The immediate effects of the marriage were subtle but significant. Trade agreements between human and Kitharan colonies became more favorable to both sides. Joint research projects began producing breakthrough discoveries in biotechnology and space engineering. Military cooperation improved as human tactical expertise combined with Kitharan defensive capabilities. But the real transformation took years to unfold. Princess Hana and Vel did not simply rule as a human leader with an alien consort. They created an entirely new form of government based on the cooperation principles that Vel had demonstrated during his trials. Their first major decision was to establish the Integrated Colonial Authority, a governing body that included representatives from all allied species. Instead of human administrators ruling alien populations, each colony would be governed by a council that included members of every species living there. The policy faced strong opposition from human traditionalists. General Kyung-soo led a group of military officers who argued that humanity should maintain its leadership role in the alliance. "We discovered faster-than-light travel," he argued. "We created the colonial expansion programs. We should remain the senior partners." But Princess Hana had learned from Vel's example during the trials. She refused to accept that the only options were human dominance or chaos. Instead, she proposed a system where leadership was based on expertise rather than species membership. If Zephyrians understand stellar navigation better than humans, then Zephyrians should lead navigation planning, she explained to the Colonial Council. If Mordians are more skilled at resource extraction, then Mordians should oversee mining operations. Strength comes from using everyone's best abilities, not from insisting that one species must control everything. The first test of this new approach came when pirates began attacking merchant ships in the Outer Rim territories. Traditional human strategy would have involved sending a large military fleet to patrol the area and hunt down the attackers. Instead, Hana and Vel created a combined response team. Human ships provided firepower and tactical expertise. Kitharan vessels contributed their advanced defensive systems and communication technology. Zephyrian navigators mapped the pirates' movement patterns. Mordian engineers reinforced merchant ships with better armor and weapons. The result was more effective than any single species response could have been. The pirates were defeated quickly and efficiently, with minimal loss of life on either side. More importantly, the success demonstrated that interspecies cooperation could work on a practical level. Over the following years, Princess Hana and Vel's partnership produced even more dramatic changes. Their children became symbols of the new galactic age. Minseo, their daughter, inherited her mother's strategic mind and her father's forearm dexterity, becoming a master of three-dimensional chess and combat tactics. Jae-hyun, their son, combined human determination with Kitharan philosophical depth, eventually becoming a renowned diplomat and peacemaker. But the most significant change was in how different species viewed each other. Before the marriage, aliens were often seen as useful partners but ultimately separate from human civilization. After seeing a human princess and a Kitharan diplomat create a successful partnership, other mixed relationships began to form. Dr. Yi-jun married a Zephyrian scientist, and their research into atmospheric engineering revolutionized terraforming technology. Captain Minho formed a long-term partnership with a Mordian engineer. and together they designed new types of starships that were stronger and more efficient than anything either species had built alone. These relationships were not always easy. Cultural differences created misunderstandings. Biological differences required careful accommodation. Some attempts at interspecies cooperation failed completely, but each success built upon the previous ones, creating a growing network of connections that spanned the galaxy. Within a generation, the idea of separate species working in isolation began to seem as outdated as the idea of separate human nations fighting. Endless wars. The transformation reached its culmination when the Terran Colonial Alliance formally dissolved itself and reformed as the Galactic Federation. Instead of a human-led organization with alien members, it became a true partnership of equals. Princess Hana, now Queen of the Federation, stood before the inaugural assembly with Vel beside her. Representatives from 47 different species filled the Great Hall, no longer separated into racial sections but mixed together according to their areas of expertise and interest. 20 years ago, Hana said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space, I asked a simple question. Was there no one brave enough to marry me? I thought I was looking for a husband. What I found was something much more important. She gestured toward the diverse crowd before her. I found the courage to change, to grow beyond what I thought was possible, to become part of something greater than any individual or any single species could achieve alone. Vel's skin glowed with warm gold patterns as he added his own words. When I volunteered for those trials, my people thought I was risking everything for a romantic gesture. But what we discovered together was that the real risk would have been staying separate, staying small, staying afraid of what we could become together. The assembly erupted in cheers that included sounds from dozens of different vocal systems. Human applause mixed with Kitharan harmonic resonances, Zephyrian whistle songs, and Mordian percussion rhythms. It was noise that no single species could have created, but together it became something beautiful. In the years that followed, the Federation continued to grow and evolve. New species joined as partners rather than subjects. Old conflicts were resolved through cooperation rather than conquest. Technologies advance faster as different forms of intelligence work together on common problems. The story that had begun with one woman's challenge to find a worthy partner had become the foundation myth of a new age. Princess Hana's question, "Is there no one brave enough to marry me?" had found its answer not in human supremacy or alien submission, but in the courage to embrace difference and create unity. As Hana and Vel grew older together, they often reflected on how much the galaxy had changed since that first day in the arena. Their marriage had been more than a personal choice. It had been a catalyst that showed everyone what was possible when different forms of life worked together as equals. In the end, it had taken an alien to show humanity what true bravery looked like. Not the strength to conquer, but the wisdom to unite. Not the power to dominate, but the courage to grow. Not the ability to stand alone, but the vision to become part of something greater. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and now finally all its children were exploring it together.